welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Now, this next, I'm hoping that the next episode is going to be a typical Q&A for 500 subs, but, very unlikely that's going to happen, but hey, here's to hoping. I'm in a state of limbo. It'll be 483, 484, 483, 484. Come on, man. Just give me 500, bro. I want 500 subs, man. Come on. Anyways, let's get right into the news. The first story is one that's a follow-up to many previous stories. It is the final results of New York 22. That district that has been in limbo for a while. It has finally been decided that the Republican nominee, Claudia Tenney, is the person who won. Anthony Brindisi is finally out. And honestly, there's not much really lost. Anthony was like a blue dog, so again, nothing really lost. And it again proves the theory that everybody keeps saying, like, oh, it was the socialists that, lost us the 2020 elections. If the socialists were the reason, why would the number of socialists in Congress go up and not down? If it was their fault, again, it would be, wouldn't it be more noticeable to see them fail? I don't get it. Literally, all of the blue dogs lost. And yet they're like, it was the socialist fault. This is so stupid. I don't get it. If you're going to make this assumption, back it up. Wouldn't it make more sense? If you said it was the socialist's fault, and then all the socialists lose, that would make sense. That would 100% make sense. But the socialists did not lose. They gained. Meanwhile, literally all of the blue dogs, pretty much all of the blue dogs are freaking gone. I think the only freshman blue dog at this particular moment that's still around is not Max Rose. I was going to say Max Rose, but I meant Jared Golden, but that was because Jared Golden, he kind of sort of actually toes the line of progressivism to a degree. He says oh, I support Medicare for all, but it's just the tepid, just say the words, and then co-sponsor the bill, but that's it. Nothing else really is major in that regard. So yeah, there's not much else to say. It's just a Republican won in this race, the end. Speaking of the House of Representatives, another member of the House of Representatives, Ron Wright of Arlington, dies after an 18-day battle with COVID-19. His family and a spokesperson confirmed Wright's death due to the coronavirus Monday morning. The Republican congressman who was reelected in November has been battling lung cancer. Okay, so the thing about him is that, unlike the other guy who died of COVID, the Louisiana Luke Letlow, rather than, they were, trying to say, oh, well, Luke Letlow, he's been trying to, he's been taking COVID-19 very seriously. Ron White, apparently, he actually was a bit of not a COVID denier, but a COVID, what's the word? Desensitizer. He was making it seem oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a flu. We need to get back to work and blah, blah, blah. And now, dead. Well, what else can you say? If you don't take COVID seriously, that's what's going to happen. For example, if you storm the United States Capitol, don't be mad when they shoot you. When you stick a fork in an electric socket, don't be mad when you get shocked. When you prick your finger in a shark tank, don't be mad when the shark tries to eat you. This is basic shit. Nothing else to say except we'll get another special election. It won't be a good one because Republican will more than likely win the district, but hey, we could try. I think this was a priority district in 2018. I'll have to check. Okay, so I did the math. Both of the times that he ran in 2018 and 2020, he had an 8-point lead over his Democratic opponent. So it's a partial priority. In the grand scheme of things, it's yeah, we should put more money towards Chambers, Nina and Antoinette. But I mean, if you have like a little bit left over, give it to a progressive Democrat who might run in this district, just in case. But anyways, now let's move on to the next story. With those bad things, let's move on to a good thing. There was recently a study done on a $15 minimum wage. It was done by the Congressional Budget Office, and it explains like the Democrats' plans for a $15 minimum wage. Raise it to $15 by 2025. And it basically looks into that and basically tries to detail, like, what would that mean? What would actually happen if we do it? In order to explain to both sides of the political aisle, like, hey, you all make your talking points, here's exactly what's going to happen. And well, here's what it showed. It showed that it increased the budget deficit over the 2021-2031 period by $54 billion, drives prices higher for goods and services stemming from the higher wages of workers paid at or near the minimum wage, increases wages for 17 million workers who currently make under $15 an hour, as well as 10 million workers whose wages would otherwise be slightly above the wage rate. The cumulative pay of affected people would increase on net by $33 billion, and the net increase would come from higher pay, $509 billion, for people who are unemployed at higher hourly wages under the bill, offset lower pay, $175 billion, because of the reduced employment under the bill. Basically, the biggest thing that it showed that most people weren't really like clear on is that it would actually it would raise wages, obviously, but it would raise unemployment. And well, cool. I mean, if the people can't, everybody is pointing out the fact that, it'll raise unemployment. Okay, but also it will make it so that the people who are employed are wealthier. Like, as it says right here, it would lift 900,000 people out of poverty. That's a good thing. It can help that many people. Do it. 100% do it. The Democrats should do it, and if they do it, I guarantee you, 2022 landslide. I'm not much of the math guy, but I guarantee you, those odds will help you. People will get richer, and you will win, Democrats. Keep up with that. Okay, so this next story is sort of a mixed bag. You see, some people are skeptical, but some, I never saw the problem. This got into a bit of a controversy in lefter Twitter than me. So basically, here's what happened. Cuba is now doing something a little different. You see, Cubans used to only be able to work under 127 officially approved private sector jobs. But now, Cuba is actually expanding it to include 2,000 different jobs that you can now apply for and work as, specifically for people to do it themselves. Like, instead of a state-sanctioned job, now they'll be free to work under private enterprise that they themselves do. Like a Cuban, for example, if they wanted to say, I don't know, let me think of a job that they couldn't have thought of, guy who resuscitates babies. Let's say that job doesn't exist in Cuba. And I don't mean a doctor, I mean somebody who just does it on the street for $5. Let's just say that job never existed in Cuba before. Now they can work under it. Now, that itself doesn't really seem that bad. I was confused. Everybody, this seemed to be a bigger deal. Everybody's it was on front page CNN. Cuba opens the door to more capitalism, and it's I didn't see what's the problem? I don't see it. Now here's where the controversy begins. The controversy happened because many people are saying this is a repeat of Glasnost, or whatever it is. Basically, when the Soviet Union started to collapse and open its doors to capitalism, especially the very, very bottom corner of the green corner in the political compass quiz, the Anarchides, as they call themselves, they got really mad at people who were more communist leaning, who like Castro and Cuba and all that jazz. And they're basically saying ha ha, Cuba's falling. Now, again, I don't see the problem. oh, Cubans can now work some private sector jobs. Ooh, like, who cares? And I mean, even the communists are like saying like, oh, this is a detail to show that the United States is like putting the boot on the Cubans' throats so much that they have to open the doors to capitalism. It's like, I really do not see the problem. Like, I'm not seeing the issue. My biggest problem with the Soviet Union doing glasnost was that they kept going. Like, if Cuba decides tomorrow, this authoritarian communism thing isn't really working out for us, so we're going to translate into more of a social democracy type of area. It's like, okay, cool. Just don't go any further. Like, that was the problem with Russia. They went from authoritarian communist to more social democratic to, let's go social liberal. How about let's go a little further and become conservative? It's like, no, go the other way. I mean, at the end of the day, if Cuba wants to do this, it's their right. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't criticize Cuba. We should 100% criticize Cuba. I criticize Cuba all the time. And by all the time, I mean, like, sometimes. Like, I mean, yeah. Like, it's like Cuba. I can deal without them, like, being extremely homophobic at the earlier years and, like, putting gays in labor camps and the whole authoritarian one-man dictatorship thing. I could deal without that. But, I mean, I'm also going to say, like, hey, Cuba did these things. I mean, how come Cubans are always the ones that come to every other country to, like, help them out during economic crises? Not economic, like, disease things. I'm talking about, like, the fact that their doctors are really good. Like, I mean, they have faults. Like, every country. Like, it's, like, one of those things of, like one of those, like, I'm trying to think. I was thinking of, like, Superman Red Sun. It's like they bring up like valid criticisms of both countries, and they think like you have to support one or the other 100%. But no, you can acknowledge that there's criticisms of both. Like, you can criticize communist China, you can criticize communist Russia, you can criticize capitalist America, you can criticize every country, everything. No country is perfect. And, like, people think just because one country does something bad, all of a sudden every other country does better. It's like those tankies that literally are like, oh, the United States, they killed the Native Americans, so it's okay for China to kill the Uyghurs. I mean, what? What Uyghur genocide? What? It's like, well, okay, yes, the U.S. did that, but it doesn't give you the right to do the same thing. Like, I mean, I keep thinking of like Superman Red Sun because they do it actually pretty decently for a superhero movie, where they have Lois Lane, who's like representing capitalist America, and she's like, in your country, they have forced labor camps and political dissidents are thrown in jail. And then communist Superman goes, your country was built on the backs of slaves and immigrants, and people sit there and starve. And it's like, okay, valid criticisms for both of you. You can both work on being a bit better. Why don't we try and actually accomplish that? But no, they'd rather fight each other. But anyways, that's like way off topic, so let's move on to some more bad news, shall we? Coming from my home state, North Carolina Senate passes bill that would require school districts to provide in-person learning option for students K-12. A bill that would require school districts that reiterates the title. Pretty much, it's a bill to force kids to go back to school. And given the fact that I happen to have a person, well, actually 2 family members that are prime in the K-12 area, I kind of don't want them to go to school, really? Like, not at all? I will give one slight credit, though, because there is one slight diamond in the rough. Jeff Jackson, a current Senate candidate, apparently voted against this. Good on him. Good on him, 100%. Until the vaccine becomes readily available for everybody in the United States, free of charge, might I add, it will not be okay to send kids to school. Keep kids in their school thingies on the computers. Keep doing that until everybody has the vaccine. Okay, now on to the next story, which is also pretty bad. Biden administration plans to continue to seek extradition of WikiLeaks Assange. President Joe Biden's administration plans to continue to seek to extradite Julian Assange from the United Kingdom to the United States to face hacking conspiracy charges, the U.S. Justice Department said. Mark Raimondi on Tuesday said the U.S. government will continue to challenge a British judge's rule last month that Assange should not be extradited to the United States because of the risk he would commit suicide. In a January 4th ruling, the judge basically they want to bring Julian Assange to, the United States. They want to continue the extradition. No. You stink. Like, Biden, you suck. Now, I will say this, like, any sort of, like, WikiLeaks pressure Assange, like, campaign thing, it will work. It could work in this scenario. I said this during the election, and let me say it again. Biden is more likely than Trump to pardon Julian Assange. How do I know this? Because Trump didn't pardon Assange. And I mean, there's one person who is way more likely to pardon Assange than either of them. But, I hate to say this, but the Assange people kind of helped ruin that. Throughout the entire primary, Assange was used as a sort of wedge issue. Like, it's a purity test. Assange, he's so perfect. Why won't Bernie say Assange? Why won't Bernie say Assange? Why won't he say Assange? And it was sort of used as a wedge issue that the Tulsi people would latch onto and basically go, but Tulsi says Assange. And basically it would try to cut off people who would potentially vote for Bernie, who would actually 100% want Assange pardoned. Because if Bernie was the president, he 100% would pardon Assange if you just said it. Literally just raised the issue and Bernie would at the very least drop the extradition charges. But no, Tulsi was 100% the real person who was going to do this. And I mean, they even went so stupid to be like, but Bernie never talked about Assange. And it's like, here's Bernie right here saying that jailing a journalist for exploiting the United States government for doing a bad thing is a bad thing, and it goes against the First Amendment. But no, that doesn't count because it didn't say Julian Assange's name. And it was so hilarious. Like, I absolutely was laughing my ass off when the people like Jimmy and Steve Poincaré and all these people were trying to get Trump to pardon Assange. They were literally trying to be Trump, if it would be really cool if you pardoned Assange, baby boy. It's he's not going to do that 100%. And everybody kept people were going no, he's 100%, he's going to. He's super anti-authoritarian. And I'm why would he wait this long time to do it then? He's just waiting for the right time so that they can't stop him. It's okay, there's he's gonna leave office in a month. He's just gonna wait till the last day, how Obama commuted Chelsea Manning's sentence on the last day. Didn't do it. And it's funny, people were retweeting Trump leaving. I literally retweeted the pen to pardon Assange isn't in the helicopter, is it? And that's the thing about this fake grifter left thing. They always want to waste your time. Every single time, they want to waste your time. Pressure Trump to pardon Julian Assange, telling you to write in Jesse Ventura on the day of the election, still spewing this stupid force the vote nonsense, even though it can't be used anymore. You can tell it's not serious, and it's just their grift due to the fact that they'll say this stuff when literally it can't be done. If any of these strategies were serious, don't you think they would have been used effectively? I'm going to go through them all again. Assange. Go try to get Bernie elected, and maybe try to get some down-the-ballot candidates to, more explicitly talk about Julian Assange, and then see where that leads. Get, a bunch of people who would probably be in favor of Julian Assange, even if it's, a wiggle round room, because they're, the thing is, there are a lot of people who's you can't say it, but you can also, do everything but say it. Now, for example, Ro Khanna, he introduced a bill that would pretty much tailor-made for Julian Assange, but it doesn't mention his name. Do that. Do stuff like that. And then use that to try and win. For the Draft Jesse people, do that until the Green Party convention. Then when it's over, be like, well, we failed. Better try again next time. And with the force the vote. After the speaker vote is over, which it is, box it up, and then save it for another day. Not still spew it and use it as the definitive fucking, like, thing. Like, they're still, like, going, like, oh, because they didn't do force the vote this one time, now automatically means everybody's a fraud, you're all frauds. You know, I know you've been fighting for Medicare for all 3 years, but this random guy on the internet said, we need to do it, we need to force vote. It's all friggin' dumb. Just stupid. I really don't, this off topic. Gonna cut to the next subject now. This one is an interesting one, because it's the big bad news. It is the second impeachment of Donald Trump. It has finally been concluded, and the results are simple. He has been acquitted. 57 senators voted guilty, 43 voted not guilty. Now, interestingly enough, that means 7 Republicans flipped and decided to vote with Democrats. Those 7 Republicans are Richard Burr, Bill Cassidy, Suzanne Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, Ben Sasse, and Pat Toomey. Now, why did these guys do it? Why out of all Republicans did these guys vote for it? Now, you could make this like huge argument about like, oh, these are the moderates of the GOP. These are the smart, independent-minded kinds of guys that are going to fight against Trump, as people have been trying to do with like Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse. But really, it's all boiled down to very simply, just look. Richard Burr, he's retiring. So is Pat Toomey. Bill Cassidy, Ben Sasse, Mitt Romney, and Suzanne Collins, they're not up for election next time. Lisa Murkowski is the only one that kind of sort of actually has some sort of like problem, because she is actually up for election in 2022, and she voted to send Donald Trump to prison. Now, I say she's kind of in trouble because of one simple thing that happened. You see, in 2010, Lisa Murkowski did something that was pretty much weird. Like, it was really weird. That was during the height of the Tea Party movement. So you see, Murkowski, she was like, even back then, labeled as like one of the moderate Republicans. She ran as such. However, there were some more, conservative-leaning, people who wanted someone else to run against Murkowski, and actually pressured a guy by the name of Joe Miller to run against her as a Tea Party conservative. And they got high-profile endorsements like Sarah Palin, and she barely lost the election. Now you might say, wait a second, but she is in the Senate, yet you're telling me she lost. What? Well, you see, Murkowski actually decided that she was going to forego the Republican Party and decided that she was going to run a write-in campaign in the general election. Lo and behold, she won. Now, given Alaska's new sort of ranked choice-ish voting system, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case for her now. But I mean, I guarantee you she's going to at the very least attempt it again. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Okay, with all that out of the way, now let's move on to the main topic of this video. The left and strategy. Because, oh boy, we seem to have a problem with strategy. It always seems that the left always seems to be fighting over, like, strategy. Like, what do we do? Who do we ally with? Who do we not ally with? Who do we vote for? Who do we vote against? How do we organize? Blah, blah, blah. and it's always divided into certain things. Should we vote for people in elections? Like, should we do things electorally? If so, do we go third party? Do we go Democrats? Or do we just skip it all together and go straight to direct action? Like protests or other direct action things. How much do we ally with people? Do we want to ally with Nancy Pelosi types? Or do we want to ally with Josh Hawley types? Basically, we basically choose who we want to align with. It's sort of again, with the political compass, do we align with the red square or do we align with the purple square? Do we go explicitly based on, our explicit tendency, or do we bend the knee to a more popular tendency? Now, I can sum up how I view all of these questions in one simple word. Yes. Now, you might be wondering, what am I saying yes to? Yes. Now, as vague as that sounds, I can summarize it very simply. Not one strategy fits all, but the difference is we have to all agree with that. Nobody agrees on that basic premise. Everybody says that we need to focus on one idea, and then we have to funnel that idea through and through. For example, some people will say, we need to put all of our energy into AOC so she can run in 2024 and then win the presidency outright, because the presidency is the only way we're going to get things done. Then there are some people who say, no, we can't focus on just AOC for that. We need to focus on all of the members of Congress. Some people will say, we need to focus purely on the Democratic Party. We need to focus purely on Movement for People's Party. We need to focus purely on the Green Party. We need to focus purely on DSA. Purely on, direct action. But no, we can't purely focus on anything, because then everybody is going to agree on that thing. And historically, that is actually very noticeable. For example, the Communist Party and other socialist political parties in that vein. And when I say socialist parties, I don't mean the Socialist Party. I mean other socialist communist type parties, like the Socialist Labor Party and the Communist Party. They always went to their end all be all goal was the worldwide socialist revolution. But the problem is, that's not the case. Nobody cares about the worldwide socialist revolution. A lot of socialist groups seem to think that there's this big idea, we need to work on the worldwide socialist revolution. They don't care. Literally every time that you try to bring them towards that, nobody will care. And this was this thing, the Communist Party would literally organize people into unions during World War II, and then when they would try to pressure those people into joining more communist-leaning groups, they would be turned down because they're we don't care, we just want our working benefits to be up. We don't care about a worldwide socialist revolution. You may care passionately about this, but not everybody will. One size does not fit all. However, you need to acknowledge that 100%. But how do we go about this? Well, very simple. Not everybody's a communist, not everybody's a socialist, not everybody's a social democrat, not everybody's a democratic socialist. So how do you appease all these left-wing groups? Multi-tendency. Multi-tendency groups are the key. And, I don't see why people would think that that's a bad thing. Multi-tendency groups are 100% the best groups for the left. Because it's basically a bunch of lefties getting together from all different blanks. Sickle-carrying communists, rose-carrying social democrats, flag-waving socialists, bat-wielding anarchists. They all come together and they're hey, we all agree on this, this, and this, and this. So why don't we work on this, 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 and this? And then when we accomplish this, 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 and this, we will be able to fight on the things we disagree on, make the world a better place before we get into our petty arguments. And that's what a bunch of groups try to do. Even to a degree, the Socialist Party, it tries to do this. They had Trotskyist factions. They had social democratic factions. They had factions that were pro-Bolshevik, even though the majority of the party was anti-Bolshevik. But when they came together, they were strong. It's like a union. Not everybody in a union has to agree on everything. Not everybody in a union is super, socialist. In fact, unions of today are rarely socialist. But they agree on the goal. The goal right there. Fix our working conditions. Make the employees more than just subservient people. Do that first. Then we can be all petty and be like, hey, I don't like you, whatever. The term solidarity means something. Now, with that, you're going to get some people you don't necessarily agree with 100%. For example, I'm not an anarchist. I'm not a communist. But if they're in the table, if they're in the group, and we're like, hey, we need to fix we need to fix things. And they were like, hey, let's come into the conversation. Cool, sit down, bro. Let's talk. We can debate on the end all be all, but we have to agree on the mid-tier goal. Now, Social Democrats, they're kind of in that sort of field where they can do that, because they are sort of the most reformist of the group. So they're more able to form coalitions, even some coalitions that we would necessarily not agree with. For example, Social Democrats form coalitions with people who are further to the right than them. Not really multi-tendency, but if you're gonna get a center left, in between center left and left person, and try to bring them into the coalition, okay, I guess maybe if you're gonna try and defeat the common enemy, and it's kind of not being able to work together, is sort of why the left fails. I see all these people go I want the Green Party, the PSL, the SCP, and the Socialist Party, and the Justice Party, and the Legal Marijuana Now Party. I want them all to come together and focus on their end-all be-all goals. But then they don't actually want to propose how do we do that? The problem is they do disagree on the very little things. There are literally socialist parties that will literally coalesce around one particular party member, and then that party member will leave, and then a bunch of them will leave with him. That's how petty some of the arguments can get. But again, you need to focus on the end all be all goal. Focus on your similarities, not the differences. Another thing that sort of is in that field is the coalition thing. Yes, of course, we form coalitions with the left, but then they're also how far does that coalition go? Do you include people on the right? Do you include the center? Do you include the libs? Now, I would say this. The left form a permanent alliance, form permanent unity among leftists, but then, otherwise, form temporary alliances. For example, the libertarians. If a libertarian says, yeah, I like weed too, why not form a coalition with them? Not even a full-on coalition. I mean, just sort of if you agree on the end goals, if they agree with you on your terms, then by all means, go for it. But you, the entire left does not have to do it for other people. Now, for the specific inter-left coalition, yeah, you're gonna have to suck it up a bit. For example, communists, you're not gonna get the worldwide socialist revolution in a day. You're not. You have to focus on the here and now. Now, some communist parties do that. The American Communist Party has kind of sort of just campaigned for the Democrats for the majority of its remaining lifetime because they want to end the, ultra-right before they actually move forth with their socialist goals. Anarchists, you're not going to get, society's not going to be abolished, and you're going to get, communes where you can all be in a love triangle or whatever. That's not going to happen in a day. And you're going to have to accept the fact that the Social Democrats are probably the ones that are going to get their goals before you get your goals. But now you're in a thriving social democracy. And isn't that better than fighting with the Social Democrats and being under fascistic rule? Let me give an example. Again, historically, the Progressive Party, the first one to be specific, Hiram Johnson and Teddy Roosevelt were the ticket. Teddy was the presidential nominee, and Hiram was the VP. They agreed on basic things. They agreed on a national health service. They agreed on, making the United States more democratic by instituting primaries and referendums nationwide. But they vastly disagreed on foreign policy. Hiram was an isolationist. Teddy was an interventionalist. But they agreed on the end goal. Like, they agreed on things, so let's work together on the things we do agree with, because, like, I mean, aside from that, we agree on pretty much everything. Like, for example, like again, let me use this. Communists, you want universal health care? So do Social Democrats. Anarchists, do you want weed to be illegal? So do the Democratic Socialists. You know, just normal, like, progressive-ish types. You want gays to have more rights? So do the Trotskyists. At least I think they do. I mean, I assume they evolved that part of their platform, because I don't think Trotsky himself was, like, you know, particularly in favor of gay rights. But then again, I don't think Edward Bernstein, founder of social democracy and democratic socialism, I don't think he was, like, so into that either. But anyways, the last major part of this is, like, sort of like, how do we accomplish, like, those goals? Like, do we do it inside the Democratic Party? Do we do it outside the Democratic Party? Do we do it, like, do we do it as, like, electoralism period? Or do we do it, like, yellow vest movement or blah, blah, blah? And you know what my answers are going to be? Yes. Yes to all. Because this is the thing. Here is the big thing that people do not understand. People who say, like, oh, we need to focus purely on building a left-wing alternative to the Democrats. Or people who say, we need to purely focus on building the Democratic Party's progressive base. Or the people who say, we need to purely go out on the streets and organize. Or people who go, we need to purely do this, 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 and this. No. Wrong. The answer is simple. Inside-outside strategy. The two-road strategy, as some call it. And when I say the inside-outside strategy, I mean in all capacities. Work inside the Democratic Party, work outside the Democratic Party. Work inside electoralism, work outside electoralism. Why? Because that strategy works. Putting all your eggs in one basket does not help. Historically, the inside-outside strategy is always the best. Whenever they focus on a one thing, it never works. Let me give an example. The people who were for a People's Party, they joined, like, a strike to, like, try and, like, get people to listen to climate change, and they glued their hands to the wall and are like, listen to us, listen to us. And what happened? Since they didn't focus on actually getting people inside of office that were sympathetic to their goals, the people pushed them out of the way and literally ripped their arms off the door frames. That is exactly what happened in Occupy as well. Occupy failed in the short term because they didn't have anybody who was really in favor of them. Like, who was in favor of Occupy protesters? Like, Dennis Kucinich, Bernie Grayson, and Rahul Grijalva. And, like, maybe, like, Peter DeFazio and a couple more people. But they did not focus on building a bunch of people who were pro-Occupy. They did not translate Occupy to a particular presidential candidate because they couldn't. They had two general election candidates, Rocky Anderson and Jill Stein, and there was no Democratic primary opponent they could focus their energy on. Meanwhile, down in Mexico, a person by the name of Andrés Manuel López Obrador was able to translate a student protest in favor of opening the government to more, transparency. He was able to translate that movement into a political party, and now he's the president of Mexico. And if you say, well, it doesn't consider count, it's Mexico. Okay, fine. How about America? People's Party, the OG People's Party, they did inside outside as well. They first focused on building their outside movements within the, establishment. They elected their own members of Congress, own senators, and ran their own presidential nominee. Then in the following election, they took that momentum and then supported a like-minded Democratic opponent. And while they did not necessarily win in the short term, William Jennings Bryan did not become president, they got the Democratic Party to agree to their platform, and then they were able to get the incumbent Democrats to agree on that platform, and lo and behold, they got bimetallism. And in the modern day, DSA, they organized protests and they work outside the Democratic Party, but they still work with the Democratic Party when they can, and lo and behold, they have a couple of representatives elected into the U.S. House. Meanwhile, the Greens have no one, because they were not able to translate their ways outside and inside, and there might actually be a problem down the line. Like, for example, a lot of Americans kept trying to be like, oh, we want to bring back the yellow vests. The yellow vests are cool. Let's be yellow vest America. But the yellow vest movement might not work in our end goal because they might not be able to translate their effectiveness well enough to the polls. Like Jean-Luc Mélenchon, perfect nominee for the yellow vests, but he's in 4th. If they don't effectively organize and he doesn't effectively make that movement his, it ain't gonna work. So yeah, that's my rambly advice. I know nobody will take it, but it's good enough to at least try to get the message out and see if anybody will listen to me. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or check out my articles on the Independent Political Report.